It's very intriguing how Li Jingliang became a star. Do you remember when Li Jingliang fought Jake Matthews? And I mean, we all know Jake Matthews, right? He just had his greatest performance in his last fight. We got to see that. But when these two guys met, Jake Matthews was putting on an beating. He was putting on a beating on this man. And eventually, I believe Jake Matthews got him down. Like he knocked him down or took him down. And then he got on that guillotine. And then Li Jingliang was very deep in that guillotine. Like he was very deep in that guillotine. And guess what Li Jingliang decides to do? He doesn't just eye pokes Jake Matthews. He eye gouges Jake Matthews. If you've seen that fight, yeah, I'm bringing you back, okay? Because that was a pretty bad eye gouge, and the ref, like, it was such a flagrant foul. It was so obvious, and the ref didn't stop it. And just to give you guys a little bit of closure, Jake Matthews was fine with it. I mean, of course he wasn't fine, but he was winning the fight, and he knew that if he took a break, that his opponent would also get the opportunity to take a break. So he didn't, because he was winning the fight. And when that happened, Li Jingliang was very hated. Like, the masses hated him. Okay? And eventually this got to Joe Rogan. And Joe Rogan, here's what Joe Rogan had to say about this, okay? Here's what he said. I thought it was fucking bullshit. You can't let a guy get away with that, or he's going to do it again. You don't do it that way. You tap. It's straight up cheating. Okay, it's what he said. It's not shady. It's cheating. They should tell him, if this ever happens again, we're going to do... If you ever think you're going to do this again, we're going to kick you out of the league. You can't do that. You can't gouge someone's eyes when they're choking you. It felt like the fingers were in there long enough for him to know the fingers were in there. The referee fucked up. The UFC should do something. Someone should do something. Now, that kind of seems to me like Joe Rogan, is in a position where he is obliged to help Jake Matthews, but he can't, and he's asking somebody to do it, because he can't do anything about it. He works for the UFC, but he can't do anything about it. And Li Jingliang was very hated because it was a nasty eye gouge, dude. If you got to see it, it was a very nasty eye gouge. But Jake Matthews won, and eventually the dust settled. Now flash forward a couple couple years, couple days, I don't know when it happened, couple months probably, but Li Jingliang got taken down by Hamza Chimaev in the first round. Taken down, brought to the bus, slammed onto the mat, and then tapped out. And now he's fighting for the main event for UFC 279. Like, how does that happen? You don't see that, where a guy gets dominated in the first round, not even close, not even... It was a... I think he was like a 3-1 underdog, I believe, but it was just an ass whooping. It was bad. He got dominated, and he went to sleep. He got dominated in the first round by, I believe, Hamzat was unranked at the time. I don't remember. Or no, he could be... I don't know. I really don't know, but now he's fighting for the co-main event for UFC 279. Now we know how that played out. We know that he didn't get to do that because of Hamza Chimaev. And you may say that he lost, that he was a loser in the whole reshuffling. You know, he lost the co-main event spot. He didn't get to fight Tony Ferguson, which, I mean, Tony Ferguson, you beat that guy, dude. Like, Tony Ferguson may be on, you know, on the end of his career. I mean, I don't want to say that because I'm a fan, but he's not an easy task. You know, I don't imagine that he's just gonna do him like he did, you know, like Michael Chandler to Tony Ferguson. Like, before Michael Chandler got to do that, he got dropped twice. You know? It wasn't easy work for Michael Chandler. I mean, Charles Oliveira was on like a finish streak, I believe. And then until he met Tony Ferguson. Tony Ferguson broke his finish streak. You know, he was on a finish streak, but because Tony Ferguson never tapped, he brought him into a unanimous decision. And Li Jingliang lost all those things. He didn't get to fight Tony Ferguson. He didn't get to be in the co-main event. And now he's gonna fight D-Rod. Right? And D-Rod is no walk in the park, of course. But a lot of people thought that Li Jingliang won, including Dana White. And when there was this massive consensus that Li Jingliang got robbed, because you gotta remember, Li Jingliang, before the whole thing, had this bit on the embedded, where he was buying a suit. You know, it was custom made for him. He was buying a suit. He was gonna bring it out for the press conference. Turns out the press conference got canceled. We got to see the clip of him trying to walk out into the crowd. You know, he had a smile on him. He was waving, and then immediately he got pulled away. You know, put back into the curtains, and people saw that, and people went, damn, he really, I mean, even Nate Diaz felt bad about it, you know. He was talking about how Chung Li didn't get the opportunity to show his new suit, you know. And Li Jingliang was very disappointed, you know. And when fans got to see that, you know, people were just like, man, Li Jingliang was, you know, he was done dirty, you know. And then he got robbed, you know. Then, quote unquote, he got robbed, you know. And like, it was just a string of bad luck. It was just a string of bad luck. You know, he came out into the MMA Hour. He wore a shirt that said he was robbed, and it was just he drew it in crayon. Like, who draws in crayons? Especially doing it on a shirt. He used a crayon to draw it, dude. Like, it looked like crayon. I think it is crayon. And when he did that whole thing, you know, like, people felt like they were connecting with Li Jingliang. Like, he all of a sudden became a fan favorite. All of a sudden he became a star, you know. And when, do you know the term lightning doesn't strike twice? Well, it did, because Li Jingliang was gonna come out. He was gonna support her, you know, his best friend, you know, Yan Xiaonan, and he was gonna come out. You know, he had an outfit, was custom made for him, you know. And turns out the place was rented out, or it, you know, it's what he said, that it got rented out, and he couldn't actually come to show off his new suit, you know, to, you know, somebody that he supports, which did win, you know. and like he just had this crazy string of bad luck, like, and people were starting to, feel bad for him, because first he didn't get to show off his new suit. It was a wholesome moment, like the whole embedded. I was every time a new embedded episode came out, I was looking forward for the whole Li Jingliang bit, because it was entertaining. He was cooking, you know, he was cooking for his family, he was cooking for his friends. Like, it was wholesome. If he wasn't fighting, he was gonna be a chef. And he said that, and that whole bit in the it was like he was the Michael Scott of the whole embedded series. I enjoyed watching him. I didn't feel bored watching him. And he was talking about his new suit. He didn't get to show that, and then he got robbed. A lot of people thought that he really got robbed, and then now he's trying to show off this new suit to support his friend. He didn't get to do that, and now it's like lightning just struck 3 times, and that like sucks for him, because he's not playing a character. He's not doing the suit because he knows that the place was gonna get rented out. And I think Li Jingliang has been like this the whole time. The whole time has been like this. But there was never a camera that got to show that he was this guy. Nate Diaz is beloved by many because he's authentic. It's not because he's always anti, it's because he's always authentic. And people love authentic people. Because, people can see if you're trying to, be fake. I mean, don't get me wrong, you can sell fights by, being the heel. You can play fights by acting, or, pretending. But if you're being authentic, you're selling yourself, which then can lead to, pay-per-views, you selling the fight. And Li Jingliang has never been unauthentic. He's always been authentic. But there's never been a camera that was pointed at him for us to see that. We never got to see that part of him that was this, he's a bit of a goofy goober, like he's a bit, reminds me of Paulo Costa. By the way, those two guys I think they're getting along, and when those two guys met, I'm like, that's kind of like, that's kind of like symbolism to me, because these two, like when Paulo Costa was being authentic, when he was being himself, I think that's when, people loved him, and I think that's the reason why people love Li Jingliang now, even though he did all these horrific things back in the day. And now Li Jingliang is now a star. Now people want to watch him. People now care about him, because it's one thing to acknowledge a guy, it's another thing to care about them. If you don't care about them, you're not gonna sell any pay-per-views. And now it's like, win or lose, Li Jingliang is beloved by many. And I think there's been this like, the UFC has this knack of just, when they lose one star, they gain 5 more, because that one star inspires 5 different guys. Like Conor McGregor comes to mind. Conor McGregor's not a star anymore, right? But then all these guys came in, like, like Sean O'Malley comes to mind, Paddy Pimblett, like all these guys, they were inspired by Conor McGregor. So even though a star dies, 2 more, 3 more, 4 more, are now exposed to us masses, and we love them, because eventually we will get bored of the same guy, and I think you point a camera, to somebody, and you will get to see who they are. And that's what happened to Li Jingliang. We got to see him, just because of this main event, co-main event opportunity. He finally got the opportunity to to show who he is. The camera was finally pointed to him. He finally had the limelight. you know and I think we should appreciate how the UFC has created this circle of life with stars. A star dies, another one is born, and that star is Li Jingliang.